The mining station looked dead from the outside. Its metal walls were covered in space dust and small meteor scratches. No lights blinked. No signals came from its communication towers. The station had been floating in the dark for 3 years, without any contact from the galaxy. Dr. Rebecca Martinez pressed her face against the window of the research ship New Horizon. She had studied alien life forms for 15 years, but abandoned space stations always made her feel nervous. Something about empty places in space felt wrong to her. "Are you sure we should go in there?" asked Tom Bradley from the communications desk. He was young and new to space travel. This was only his second mission beyond Earth. Captain James Mitchell looked at his crew. The distress signal came from inside that station. If someone is alive in there, we have to help them. That's what humans do. Rebecca nodded and checked her equipment bag. As the ship's xenobiologist, she would be part of the first team to enter the station. Her job was to study any alien life they might find inside. "Life support shows the station still has air," said Dr. Lisa Thompson, the ship's medical officer. "But the temperature is very cold. We'll need our heating suits." The docking took 20 minutes. The station's docking bay still worked, but everything moved very slowly. When the doors finally opened, cold air rushed out like a frozen breath. Rebecca stepped inside with Captain Mitchell and Security Chief Robert Hayes. Their footsteps echoed in the empty hallways. The lights were very dim, and strange shadows moved on the walls as they walked. "This place gives me the creeps," Robert said quietly. He held his scanner in one hand and his weapon in the other. Why would anyone abandon a perfectly good mining station? They walked deeper into the station. Most rooms were empty. The mining equipment was still there, but covered in dust. Computer screens were dark. Everything looked like the workers had left in a hurry. "Captain," Rebecca called from ahead, "you need to see this." She had found a door marked with alien writing. The symbols were from different species across the galaxy. Some Rebecca recognized from her studies. Others were completely new to her. "What does it say?" Captain Mitchell asked. Rebecca studied the symbols carefully. "It's strange. Each line says the same thing but in different languages. It says, 'Biological waste storage, authorized personnel only.'" Robert raised his weapon. "Biological waste?" That could mean disease or poison. They opened the door carefully. Inside was a long hallway with more doors on both sides. Each door had a small window. Rebecca looked through the first window and gasped. Inside the room were dozens of metal containers. Each container was about the size of a small bed. They had clear tops so you could see inside, and inside each container was a small creature. "Oh my God," Rebecca whispered. "They're alive." The creatures were young, very young. Some looked like they had just been born. Others appeared to be a few months old. They came from different species across the galaxy. Rebecca could identify several types just by looking. "Are those Shadow Stalker pups?" Captain Mitchell asked, pointing to small black creatures with silver eyes. Rebecca nodded. "And those red ones with the sharp teeth are Crimson Reaper babies. And look over there, those are Void Hunter juveniles." Robert stepped back. "Wait a minute. These are all predator species, the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. What are they doing here?" They moved from room to room. Each room had more containers, with more young predators inside. Rebecca counted over 200 creatures in total. All of them were babies or very young juveniles from the most feared species in known space. "This is impossible," Rebecca said. "No one keeps predator young alive. Every civilization in the galaxy destroys them or abandons them to die." Captain Mitchell called the ship. "Tom, I need you to contact the galactic authorities. Ask them about this mining station. I want to know who owns it and what they were doing here." While they waited for information, Dr. Thompson arrived with medical equipment. She began scanning the creatures through the container walls. "Their vital signs are weak but stable," she reported. "They're cold and probably hungry. Some show signs of being here for months." Tom's voice came through their communication devices. Captain, I have bad news. The Galactic Council says this station is a legal dumping ground. Different species bring their unwanted predator offspring here to die. It's been operating for over 50 years. Rebecca felt sick to her stomach. They just abandon babies here? Leave them to starve? According to the Council, these creatures are classified as future threats, Tom continued. No species in the galaxy has ever successfully raised predator young without them eventually killing their caretakers. The Council considers this station a necessary service. Dr. Thompson looked at one of the containers holding a tiny shadow stalker pup. The creature was so small it could fit in her hands. Its silver eyes looked up at her through the clear container top. This one can't be more than a week old, she said softly. How can anyone look at something so small and see only danger? Captain, Mitchell studied the rooms full of abandoned young. Each creature represented a species that the galaxy feared. But all he could see were babies who had been thrown away by their own civilizations. The Council wants to know if we found any survivors, Tom's voice said through the communication system. They're sending a cleanup crew to dispose of the biological waste. Robert looked confused. Dispose of them? You mean kill them? That's exactly what they mean, Rebecca said angrily. These aren't biological waste. These are living beings. They're children. Captain Mitchell made a decision that would change everything. Tom, tell the Council we found no survivors. Tell them the station is empty. But Captain, Robert started. To protest. These creatures deserve a chance at life, Captain Mitchell said firmly. Every other species in the galaxy has given up on them. Maybe it's time humans showed them a different way. Rebecca looked at the containers full of young predators. In her 15 years of studying alien life, she had never seen anything so heartbreaking. These babies had been abandoned by entire civilizations simply because of what they might become. What are you thinking, Captain? She asked. Captain Mitchell looked around at all the small creatures. I'm thinking it's time to find out if humans can do what no other species has ever done. I'm thinking it's time to take these kids home. The decision would put them against galactic law and challenge everything the universe believed about predator species. But as Rebecca looked at the tiny creatures in their cold containers, she knew the captain was right. These babies deserved a chance to prove that they could be more than just the monsters everyone expected them to become. The creatures were now aboard the New Horizon. Rebecca had spent 3 hours moving the containers from the mining station to the ship's cargo bay. Each container was carefully placed and connected to the ship's power system to keep the young predators warm and alive. Captain Mitchell stood in the cargo bay looking at over 200 containers. Inside each one was a baby or young creature that the entire galaxy had given up on. The sight made him feel both sad and angry at the same time. Captain, we have a problem, Tom Bradley said as he entered the cargo bay. His face was pale and worried. I'm getting messages from the Galactic Council. They know we were at the mining station. Dr. Lisa Thompson looked up from where she was checking the creature's health. How could they know? You told them we found nothing. Tom handed Captain Mitchell a communication device. They want to speak with you directly. It sounds urgent. The screen flickered and showed the face of Ambassador Kai Thornton. He was human, but worked for the Galactic Council. His expression was serious and concerned. Captain Mitchell, I need to know exactly what you found on that mining station, Ambassador Thornton said. And please don't lie to me. The Council has ways of knowing when ships visit the dumping stations. Captain Mitchell looked at his crew. Rebecca nodded at him, encouraging him to tell the truth. We found predator young, Ambassador, over 200 of them. They were left there to die. Ambassador Thornton closed his eyes and sighed deeply. Captain, please tell me you didn't bring them aboard your ship. I couldn't leave them there to starve, Captain Mitchell replied. They're just babies. Captain, you don't understand what you've done, Ambassador Thornton said urgently. The Galactic Council is already sending ships to intercept you. They consider those creatures to be the most dangerous biological weapons in the galaxy. Dr. Emily Foster entered the cargo bay carrying a tablet with research data. She had been studying predator species for years and knew more about them than almost any other human. Ambassador, with respect, these creatures are not weapons. They're abandoned children. Ambassador Thornton's image turned to look at Dr. Foster. Dr. Foster, I've read your research on predator domestication, but you're talking about Earth animals. These are alien predators that have killed billions of beings across the galaxy for thousands of years. Every species says the same thing, Dr. Foster replied. They all claim that predator young cannot be raised safely, but has anyone ever actually tried to raise them with love and care? Of course they have, Ambassador Thornton said. The Zentari tried it 300 years ago. The young shadow stalkers they raised killed an entire colony when they became adults. The Morvac attempted to domesticate void hunter pups 50 years ago. The creatures turned on their caretakers and destroyed 2 cities. Robert Hayes had been listening quietly. As security chief, he was responsible for keeping the crew safe. Ambassador, what exactly are you asking us to do? Ambassador Thornton's expression became even more serious. The Galactic Council is giving you 2 choices. Captain, you can either destroy the creatures immediately, or you can drop them off on quarantine planet Delta 7, where they will be left to survive on their own. Rebecca felt angry. That's not really a choice. Dropping them on a quarantine planet is just another way of killing them. Most of these babies are too young to survive without care. The Council believes it's more humane than keeping them in containers, Ambassador Thornton said. At least on the planet, they would have a natural death. Dr. Thompson had been examining one of the shadow stalker pups through its container. The little creature was awake and looking at her with curious silver eyes. Ambassador, this pup is maybe 2 weeks old. It can't even eat solid food yet. How is abandoning it on a planet humane? David Park, the ship's engineer, joined the conversation. He had been working on modifying the ship's life support systems to better care for the creatures. I've been reading about these species. The problem isn't that they can't be domesticated. The problem is that no one has ever tried to understand their needs. What do you mean? Ambassador Thornton asked. David showed them his research on his tablet. Every attempt to raise predator young has failed because other species tried to raise them like their own young. But these creatures have completely different emotional and social needs. It's like trying to raise a wolf pup the same way you would raise a rabbit. Dr. Foster nodded excitedly. David is right. On Earth, we've successfully domesticated many predator species. Wolves became dogs. Wild cats became house cats. Even dangerous birds of prey can be trained to work with humans. But we did it by understanding their natural behaviors and working with them, not against them. Ambassador Thornton looked skeptical. Dr. Foster, those were Earth species that evolved alongside humans. These are alien predators from completely different worlds with completely different evolutionary paths. But the basic principles might be the same, Rebecca said. All young creatures need food, warmth, safety, and social contact. Maybe the reason other species failed is because they were too afraid to actually bond with the young predators. Mark. Johnson, the maintenance supervisor, had been quiet during the conversation. He was a practical man who usually didn't get involved in scientific debates, but now he spoke up. I've been watching these creatures for the past few hours. The little ones respond when we get close to their containers. They seem to recognize us already. That could be hunting behavior, Ambassador Thornton warned. Predators are known to study their prey before attacking. Mark shook his head. No, sir. I've seen hunting behavior. This is different. One of the shadow stalker pups actually seemed to calm down when I talked to it. It stopped crying and just listened to my voice. Captain Mitchell had been thinking, while his crew discussed the situation. Now he made his decision. Ambassador, I appreciate the Council's position, but I can't destroy these creatures and I won't abandon them on a planet to die slowly. Captain, You're talking about violating direct orders from the Galactic Council, Ambassador Thornton said. This could mean the end of your career and criminal charges for your entire crew. Then that's a risk we'll have to take, Captain Mitchell said firmly. These creatures deserve a chance at life. If every other species in the galaxy has given up on them, then maybe it's time for humans to try a different approach. Dr. Foster stepped forward. Ambassador, give us 6 months. Let us try to raise these creatures using human methods. If we fail, if they become dangerous, then we'll accept whatever punishment the Council decides. But if we succeed, it could change how the entire galaxy views predator species. Ambassador Thornton was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. Captain, I can't officially approve this experiment, but I can delay the Council's response for a few days. That might give you time to get back to Earth, where the Council has less authority. Thank you, Ambassador, Captain Mitchell said. Don't thank me yet, Captain, Ambassador Thornton replied. If this goes wrong, if even one of those creatures hurts someone, the consequences will be severe for all of humanity. The Council might ban humans from space travel entirely. After the communication ended, the crew stood in the cargo bay looking at the containers full of young predators. They had just committed themselves to an experiment that had never been tried before. If they failed, it could mean disaster not just for them, but for all of humanity. But as Rebecca watched one of the tiny Crimson Reaper babies sleeping peacefully in its container, she felt hopeful. These weren't monsters. They were just babies who needed someone to care about them. The journey home to Earth would take 4 months. 4 months to prove that love and understanding could succeed where fear and prejudice had failed. 2 weeks had passed since Captain Mitchell decided to keep the Predator young. The crew of the New Horizon had transformed 3 empty cargo bays into special homes for the creatures. Each bay was designed for different types of predators based on their homeworlds and natural needs. Dr. Emily Foster walked through the first bay, which housed the Shadow Stalker pups. The room was kept dark with soft purple lighting that matched their home planet. Thick carpeting covered the floors, too. Muffle sounds and hiding spots were built into the walls. 23 Shadow Stalker pups lived here now, and they were no longer in containers. How are they doing today? Rebecca asked as she joined Emily in the bay. Emily smiled and pointed to a corner where 3 pups were playing together. Much better. They're starting to explore and interact with each other. Watch this. Emily made a soft clicking sound with her tongue. Several pups lifted their heads and looked at her with bright silver eyes. One small pup, barely the size of a house. Cat walked over to her and rubbed against her leg like a friendly kitten. That's amazing, Rebecca said. The galactic reports said Shadow Stalkers were impossible to approach safely. The reports were wrong, Emily replied, gently petting the small pup. They're not naturally aggressive. They're just very cautious and protective. Once they trust you, they're actually quite affectionate. In the second bay, Dr. Lisa Thompson was having more difficulties. The Void Hunter juveniles were about the size of large dogs and had bright blue fur with 6 legs. They were intelligent creatures, but they seemed depressed and refused to eat the food the crew offered them. I don't understand it, Lisa said to David Park, who was adjusting the room's temperature controls. Their bodies are healthy, but they won't eat anything we give them. David had been studying Void Hunter behavior for days. I think the problem is that they're pack hunters. On their homeworld, they hunt together in family groups. Maybe they don't know how to eat alone. Mark Johnson was working on building climbing structures for the creatures. What if we tried feeding them all together at the same time? Make it feel more like a family meal? Lisa thought about this idea. It's worth trying, but we'll need to be careful. If they get excited about food, they might become aggressive. They decided to test the idea with just 4 juveniles. Lisa placed large bowls of food in the center of the room and called the young Void Hunters over. At first, they just sniffed the food and walked away. But then one juvenile started eating, and immediately the others joined in. Within minutes, All four were eating happily together. It worked, Lisa said excitedly. They needed to eat as a family group. The third bay housed the most challenging creatures, the Crimson Reaper babies. These were the most feared predators in the galaxy. Adult Crimson Reapers were known for their intelligence, strength, and ruthless hunting abilities. But the babies in the bay looked nothing like the monsters from galactic horror stories. Sarah Williams, the ship's engineer, had volunteered to work with the Crimson Reapers. She found them to be curious and playful, much like human children. They had bright red scales and small wings that wouldn't be strong enough for flying until they were much older. The problem with these little ones is boredom, Sarah explained to Captain Mitchell during his daily visit. They're incredibly intelligent. If we don't give them things to do, they get into trouble. As if to prove her point, one of the baby Reapers had somehow figured out how to open a storage cabinet and was now playing with the tools inside. Sarah gently took the tools away and gave the baby a puzzle toy instead. They learn so fast, Sarah continued. This little one figured out that puzzle in less than an hour. I had to make it more complicated 3 times. Captain Mitchell watched as several Reaper babies worked together to solve a group puzzle. They're problem solvers. That's probably how they became such effective predators as adults. Exactly, Sarah said. But if we give them the right kinds of problems to solve, safe problems that help instead of hurt, maybe they'll use their intelligence differently. The real breakthrough came in week 3. Mark Johnson had been working late in the Shadow Stalker Bay, repairing a damaged ventilation panel. He was tired and frustrated, and without thinking, he started humming an old song his mother used to sing to him. To his surprise, the Shadow Stalker pups gathered around him. They sat quietly and listened to his humming with what looked like fascination. When he stopped, they made soft, chirping sounds that almost sounded like they were trying to copy the melody. "Dr. Foster," Mark called over the communication system, "you need to see this." When Emily arrived, Mark explained what had happened. She asked him to hum the song again. Once more, the pups gathered around and listened carefully. This time, Emily recorded their chirping responses. "They're trying to sing along," Emily said in amazement. "Shadow stalkers are known for their complex communication patterns. Maybe music speaks to something deep in their nature." Word of Mark's discovery spread quickly through the ship. Soon, crew members were taking turns singing to the different groups of predator young. The Void Hunter juveniles seemed to prefer rhythmic songs with strong beats. The Crimson Reaper babies liked complex melodies that challenged their intelligent minds. But not everything went smoothly. In the 4th week, the crew faced their first serious crisis. One of the older Crimson Reaper juveniles, about the size of a large dog, had been growing more aggressive as it got bigger and stronger. Tom Bradley had named it Red because of its bright scarlet scales. Red had been fine with the humans when it was smaller, but as it grew, it started showing signs of the aggressive behavior that made Crimson Reapers so feared. It snapped at crew, members who got too close and refused to participate in group activities. "I think Red is going through a kind of teenage phase," Sarah explained to the senior crew. "Crimson Reapers become more independent as they mature. Red is probably feeling confused about its place in our group." The situation became dangerous when Red attacked Jessica Brown, the ship's navigator, during a routine feeding. Jessica was not seriously hurt, but Red's claws left scratches on her arm that required medical attention. "Maybe the Galactic Council was right," Robert Hayes said during an emergency meeting. "Maybe these creatures really are too dangerous to keep around humans," Rebecca disagreed. "One incident doesn't mean the whole experiment is a failure. Human teenagers can be difficult too, but we don't abandon them." Captain Mitchell looked tired and worried. "What do you think we should do, Dr. Foster?" Emily had been thinking about the problem all day. "I think Red needs more space and more challenging activities. It's growing up, and it needs to feel like it has a purpose. Maybe we can train it to help with ship duties, the way we might train a working dog. You want to give a predator creature a job on the ship?" Robert asked in disbelief. "Why not?" Emily replied. Red is intelligent and strong. If we can channel that intelligence and strength into helpful activities, it might solve the aggression problem. They decided to try Emily's suggestion. Sarah began training Red to help with maintenance work in the cargo bays. The young Reaper was incredibly strong and could reach places that humans couldn't. More importantly, having important work to do seemed to make Red feel valued and respected. Within a week, Red's aggressive behavior had almost completely disappeared. It still showed the natural confidence of its species, but it no longer attacked humans. Instead, it seemed proud of its work and eager to help with new projects. It's working, Sarah reported happily. Red actually seems to enjoy having responsibilities. It's like giving a smart child challenging homework. By the end of the first month, the crew had learned valuable lessons about each species. Shadow stalkers needed quiet environments and gentle interaction. Void hunters needed family groups and shared activities. Crimson Reapers needed mental challenges and meaningful work. Most importantly, all the creatures needed to feel loved and valued. This was something no other species in the galaxy had ever tried to give them. We're actually doing it, Rebecca said to Captain Mitchell as they watched the 3 bays full of healthy, happy predator young. We're proving that these creatures can live peacefully with other species. Captain Mitchell nodded, but he still looked worried. The real test will come when they're adults. These are still babies. We don't know what will happen when they reach full size and develop adult instincts. Rebecca understood his concern, but as she watched a group of shadow stalker pups playing gently with some puzzle toys, she felt hopeful. These weren't the monsters that galactic legends described. They were intelligent, social creatures who had simply never been given a chance to show their better nature. The experiment was working, but the hardest parts were still ahead of them. 3 months had passed since the New Horizon left the mining station. The predator young had grown significantly, and their relationships with the human crew had deepened in ways no one expected. What started as a rescue mission had become something much more meaningful. Rebecca stood in the Shadow Stalker Bay watching her favorite pup, which she had named Storm. Storm was now the size of a medium dog, with sleek black fur and intelligent silver eyes. The remarkable thing about Storm was how protective it had become of Rebecca and the other crew members. Storm follows you everywhere, Dr. Lisa Thompson observed as she entered the bay for the daily health checks. It's like having a very unusual guard dog. Rebecca smiled as Storm walked beside her, always staying close enough to touch her leg with its nose. Yesterday, when I was working late in the lab, Storm somehow got out of the bay and came looking for me. I found it sitting outside, the lab door like it was standing guard. This protective behavior wasn't limited to Storm. All the Shadow Stalkers had bonded with specific crew members and showed clear signs of wanting to keep their humans safe. When strangers entered their bay during shift changes, the Shadow Stalkers would position themselves between the newcomers and their favorite humans. In the Void Hunter Bay, David Park was amazed by how much the creatures had learned. The juveniles were now helping with ship maintenance in ways that no one had planned. Their 6 legs made them incredibly stable workers, and their natural problem-solving abilities helped them understand complex mechanical tasks. "Watch this," David said to Captain Mitchell during his morning rounds. David pointed to a damaged pipe near the ceiling and made a clicking sound. One of the Void Hunter juveniles, which the crew called Comet, immediately climbed up to examine the pipe. Comet studied the damage for a moment, then climbed back down and brought David the exact tool needed for the repair. The creature had learned to recognize different types of problems and knew which tools were used to fix them. "That's incredible," Captain Mitchell said. "How did you teach it to do that?" David laughed. "I didn't teach it anything. Comet figured it out by watching me work. These creatures learn faster than any AI computer I've ever seen. The most surprising development was happening with the Crimson Reapers. Sarah Williams had continued working with Red and the other juveniles, giving them increasingly complex tasks to keep their intelligent minds busy. The results were beyond anything she had imagined. Red had become the unofficial leader of the Crimson Reaper group. It organized the other juveniles into work teams and made sure everyone had important jobs to do. When new puzzles or tasks were introduced, Red would study them carefully and then teach the younger Reapers how to solve them. It's like watching a teacher work with students, Sarah explained to Dr. Foster. Red has natural leadership abilities, but it uses them to help others instead of dominating them. The crew had also discovered that each species had unique communication abilities that could be useful for ship operations. The Shadow Stalkers had excellent hearing and could detect mechanical problems by listening to engine sounds. The Void. Hunters could sense electrical problems with their sensitive fur. The Crimson Reapers could analyze complex data patterns and spot errors that humans might miss. Tom Bradley had been working with all three species to develop a communication system that allowed them to report problems to the crew. It wasn't quite language, but it was close enough to be very useful. "They're becoming part of the crew," Tom reported during a weekly meeting. "Not as pets or experiments, but as actual working members of the team." Jessica Brown had been documenting everything for her official report to Earth Command. Her videos showed young predators playing, learning, working, and bonding with humans in ways that challenged everything the galaxy believed about these species. "The footage is remarkable," Jessica said. "But I'm worried about how Earth Command will react. This goes against thousands of years of galactic policy." The crew's biggest test came in the 4th month when they encountered a real emergency. The ship's main computer system failed during a solar storm, leaving them without navigation or life support controls. The crew had only hours to fix the problem before the ship became uninhabitable. The solution came from an unexpected source. Red and 2 other Crimson Reaper juveniles had been watching the humans work frantically to repair the computer. The young predators seemed to understand that something was seriously wrong. Red approached Sarah and began making complex clicking sounds while pointing at the damaged computer panel. At first, Sarah didn't understand what Red was trying to tell her. But then Red picked up a diagnostic tool and began running scans on the computer circuits. "I think Red is trying to help," Sarah called to the other crew members. "It's acting like it knows what's wrong with the computer." Working together, Red and the other Crimson Reapers identified the exact location of the computer failure. Their ability to recognize data patterns allowed them to find the problem much faster than the human crew could have done alone. The ship was saved because the Predator young had chosen to help instead of hiding during the crisis. "They could have just stayed in their bays where it was safe," Captain Mitchell said later. "But instead, they came to help us. That tells me everything I need to know about their character." However, not everything was perfect. As the creatures grew larger and stronger, some crew members began to feel nervous around them. The Shadow Stalkers were now large enough to seriously hurt a human if they wanted to. The Void Hunters had sharp claws that could cut through metal. The Crimson Reapers had teeth and strength that could be deadly weapons. Robert Hayes remained, concerned about safety. "I trust these creatures," he said during a security meeting. "But they're still predators. We need to be prepared for the possibility that their instincts might change as they get older." His fears seemed justified when one of the Crimson Reaper juveniles, named Blaze by the crew, had a serious behavioral incident. Blaze was slightly older than the others and had been showing signs of increased aggression for several days. This incident happened during feeding time. Mark Johnson was distributing food when Blaze suddenly attacked him without warning. Blaze's claws raked across Mark's chest, leaving deep scratches that required immediate medical attention. For a moment, it looked like the Galactic Council's warnings had been correct, but then something unexpected happened. Red and the other Crimson Reapers immediately surrounded Blaze and began making loud, harsh sounds. They were clearly scolding Blaze for attacking Mark. Storm and several Shadow Stalkers also entered the bay and positioned themselves protectively around Mark. Blaze seemed confused and ashamed. It backed away from Mark and made soft whimpering sounds that Dr. Foster recognized as apologies in Crimson Reaper communication. The other creatures are policing Blaze's behavior, Dr. Foster observed as she treated Mark's wounds. They know that attacking humans is wrong, and they're teaching that to Blaze. Mark, despite his injuries, refused to blame Blaze. "It's just a kid having a bad day," he said. "Human teenagers sometimes lash out too. That doesn't mean we give up on them." The incident forced the crew to establish clearer rules and boundaries for the growing predators. But it also showed that the creatures were developing their own moral codes about how to behave around humans. By the end of the 4th month, the predator young had become true members of the ship's family. They worked alongside humans, protected them during dangers, and even disciplined each other when someone misbehaved. "We're not just proving that predators can be domesticated," Rebecca said during one of her research logs. "We're proving that they can become partners and friends. We're creating a new kind of relationship between species that has never existed before." As the New Horizon continued its journey toward Earth, the crew knew they were carrying more than just rescued creatures. They were carrying proof that love, patience, and understanding could overcome millions of years of fear and prejudice. The real test would come when they reached Earth and had to convince the rest of humanity that their experiment had succeeded. The warning came when the New Horizon was still 2 weeks away from Earth. Tom Bradley received the message during his regular communication check with Earth Command. His face went pale as he read the transmission. "Captain," Tom called over the ship's communication system, "you need to see this immediately." Captain Mitchell arrived at the communication station within minutes. The message on Tom's screen was marked with the highest priority codes from both Earth Command and the Galactic Council. "They're sending an inspection fleet to intercept us," Tom explained. 3 ships from the Galactic Council and 2 from Earth Command. They want to board the New Horizon and evaluate the threat level of our passengers. Rebecca felt her stomach drop. "Evaluate the threat level? What does that mean exactly?" Dr. Foster joined them at the communication station. "It means they're coming to decide whether our creatures should live or die," she said grimly. "If the inspection team decides the predators are too dangerous, they have authority to destroy them immediately." The crew gathered in the main conference room to discuss their situation. Captain Mitchell read the full message aloud. The inspection would happen in 1 week when the fleet intercepted their ship. The crew would be required to demonstrate full control over the predators and prove that they posed no threat to galactic security. "We knew this day would come," Captain Mitchell said. "The question is, are we ready for it?" Sarah Williams spoke up from where she sat with Red lying peacefully at her feet. The Crimson Reaper juvenile had grown large enough that its head reached her shoulder when it stood, but it remained gentle and calm around the crew. "The creatures are ready," Sarah said confidently. "They've proven themselves over and over again. The problem is whether the inspectors will be open-minded enough to see the truth." Robert Hayes was more pessimistic. "These are representatives from species that have feared predators for thousands of years. They're not coming here hoping to be proven wrong. They're coming here expecting to find dangerous monsters." Dr. Lisa Thompson had been quiet during the discussion. Now she looked up from her medical reports. "There's something else we need to consider. The stress of having strangers aboard the ship might affect the creatures' behavior. They've bonded with us, but they might see the inspectors as threats." This was a serious concern. Storm and the other shadow stalkers had shown strong protective instincts toward their human friends. The Void Hunters were naturally cautious around strangers. The Crimson Reapers were intelligent enough to sense tension and conflict. "We need to prepare them for what's coming," Dr. Foster suggested. "We have 1 week to help them understand that the inspectors aren't enemies, just visitors who need to be treated carefully." The crew spent the next week working intensively with all the predator young. They practiced having the creatures remain calm when strangers entered their bays. They rehearsed commands that would keep the predators in safe positions during the inspection. Most importantly, they tried to help the creatures understand that this visit was crucial for their future. Jessica Brown worked on organizing demonstrations that would show the inspectors how well the creatures had been integrated into ship operations. David Park prepared displays of the Void Hunter's mechanical abilities. Sarah Williams set up problem-solving tests that would showcase the Crimson Reaper's intelligence. Mark Johnson spent extra time with the Shadow Stalkers, using music and gentle interaction to keep them calm and relaxed. He was worried that Storm might try to protect Rebecca if it sensed any hostility from the visitors. The inspection fleet arrived exactly on schedule. Captain Mitchell watched through the bridge windows as 5 large ships surrounded the New Horizon. The lead ship belonged to the Galactic Council and was commanded by Admiral Zara Chen, a human who had spent most of her career working with alien species. "Prepare for boarding," Admiral Chen's voice came through the communication system. "All crew members and specimens will remain in designated areas during the inspection." The word specimens made Rebecca angry, but she controlled her emotions. Getting upset wouldn't help their cause. The creatures were not specimens. They were family members who deserved respect and protection. The inspection team consisted of 12 representatives from different species across the galaxy. Most of them looked nervous as they boarded the New Horizon. Several wore protective equipment as if they expected to be attacked at any moment. Admiral Chen led the group to the Predator bays for the first phase of inspection. She was accompanied by Dr. Marcus Webb, a xenobiologist from Earth who specialized in dangerous species, and several alien scientists who had studied predator behavior for decades. "Before we enter the bays," Admiral Chen announced, "I want to make something clear. This inspection is not about whether these creatures are cute or friendly. It's about whether they represent a threat to galactic security. Sentiment will not factor into our decision." Captain Mitchell nodded professionally. "We understand, Admiral. We're confident that you'll find our passengers to be remarkable examples of successful interspecies cooperation." The first test came in the Shadow Stalker bay. Storm and 22 other Shadow Stalkers were arranged in a loose group near the center of the room. As the inspection team entered, several of the alien representatives stepped back nervously. Adult Shadow Stalkers were known for their ability to move silently and strike without warning. But these Shadow Stalkers remained perfectly calm. Storm looked at Rebecca and then at the visitors, clearly recognizing that these were important guests who should be treated with respect. The other Shadow Stalkers followed Storm's lead and stayed in relaxed but alert positions. "Remarkable," Dr. Webb murmured as he observed their behavior. "I've never seen Shadow Stalkers remain so calm around multiple unknown species." Rebecca stepped forward. "Storm, introduction protocol." Storm approached Admiral Chen slowly and sat down about 3 feet away from her. It made no aggressive moves, but looked directly at her with its intelligent silver eyes. After a moment, Storm made a soft chirping sound that Rebecca had taught it as a peaceful greeting. "It's trying to communicate," Admiral Chen said with surprise. "Shadow Stalkers are not known for attempting peaceful contact with other species." The inspection team spent an hour in the Shadow Stalker Bay, watching the creatures demonstrate their learned behaviors and their gentle interactions with the human crew. Not once did any of the Shadow Stalkers show aggression or threatening behavior. The Void Hunter Bay provided even more impressive demonstrations. Comet and the other juveniles showed their mechanical abilities by performing routine maintenance tasks while the inspectors watched. They worked together as coordinated. Teams used tools appropriately and followed complex instructions from David Park. "This is unprecedented," one of the alien scientists admitted. "Void Hunters are pack hunters known for their savage group attacks. These individuals are displaying cooperative behavior with non-pack members. But the real test came in the Crimson Reaper Bay. Adult Crimson Reapers were considered the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. Even the juveniles made several inspection team members visibly nervous. Red had grown to nearly full size and was an impressive sight. Its red scales gleamed under the bay lights, and its intelligent eyes studied each visitor carefully. The other Crimson Reaper juveniles arranged themselves around Red in a formation that could have been threatening, but instead appeared protective. These creatures are large enough to cause serious damage, Dr. Webb observed. How do you maintain control over them? Sarah Williams approached Red confidently. We don't control them, Dr. Webb. We work with them as partners. To demonstrate, Sarah presented Red with a complex puzzle that required multiple steps to solve. Red studied the puzzle for a moment, then began working through the solution while explaining each step to the younger Reapers through soft clicking sounds. It's teaching the others, Admiral Chen said in amazement. Crimson Reapers are supposed to be solitary hunters. This individual is displaying advanced social and educational behaviors. The most powerful moment of the inspection came when a small accident occurred. One of the alien scientists accidentally knocked over a container of tools, creating a loud crash that startled everyone in the bay. Instead of reacting with aggression or fear, Red immediately moved to check if the scientist was injured. When Red saw that the alien was unharmed but shaken, the young Crimson Reaper gently picked up the scattered tools and returned them to their proper places. It helped me, the alien scientist said in shock. A Crimson Reaper helped me instead of attacking me. The inspection continued for 3 days. The team observed feeding times, play periods, work sessions, and rest cycles. They interviewed every crew member and reviewed all of Jessica's documentation. They ran medical scans on the creatures and tested their responses to various stimuli. Throughout the entire inspection, not a single predator showed any aggressive behavior toward the visitors. The creatures seemed to understand that they were being evaluated and made special efforts to demonstrate their best behaviors. On the final day, Admiral Chen called the inspection team together for their decision meeting. Captain Mitchell and his crew waited anxiously in the conference room while the inspectors deliberated in private. 6 months after the New Horizon returned to Earth, the planet had become the center of galactic attention. Representatives from dozens of species arrived daily to witness what many were calling the most important discovery in interspecies relations: history. Dr. Rebecca Martinez stood before the Galactic Science Council in Geneva, preparing to present her final research findings. Behind her, on a large screen, played videos of Storm and the other Shadow Stalkers working peacefully alongside human technicians at the newly established Predator Integration Center. Members of the Council, Rebecca began. 6 months ago, we rescued 237 Predator young from certain death. Today, I can report that all of these individuals have successfully integrated into human society and have become valuable contributors to our communities. The audience included scientists, diplomats, and military leaders from across the galaxy. Many had come expecting to see evidence of failure or danger. Instead, they watched footage of young predators helping with construction projects, assisting in scientific research, and even participating in rescue operations. Storm had become something of a celebrity. The Shadow Stalker was now fully grown, but remained gentle and protective. It worked with Rebecca at the Integration Center, helping to train newly arrived Predator young and serving as an example of successful rehabilitation. The key to our success, Rebecca continued, was understanding that these creatures are not inherently evil or dangerous. They simply required appropriate care, training, and most importantly, love and acceptance. Dr. Emily Foster had been appointed as the director of Earth's Predator Rehabilitation Program. Her research had revolutionized understanding of predator psychology and behavior. She stood up to address a question from the Zentari delegate, whose species had failed catastrophically in their attempts to raise Shadow Stalkers centuries ago. Dr. Foster, the Zentari delegate said, "Our historical records show that Shadow Stalkers killed everyone who tried to care for them. How do you explain the difference in your results?" Emily smiled and gestured to Storm, who was lying peacefully near Rebecca's feet. "The difference is in our approach. Your ancestors tried to suppress the Shadow Stalker's natural instincts and behaviors. We worked with those instincts instead of against them. She clicked her presentation remote, showing brain scans of the rehabilitated creatures. Shadow stalkers are naturally protective and social. When we accepted those traits and channeled them positively, they became loyal guardians rather than dangerous threats. The Void Hunter juveniles had also exceeded all expectations. Comet, now adult-sized, worked as a senior maintenance specialist on Earth's largest space station. Its six-legged stability and problem-solving abilities made it invaluable for complex engineering tasks. David Park, who had been promoted to Chief of Interspecies Engineering, demonstrated Comet's abilities via live video link from the space station. Comet can perform maintenance tasks that would require a team of human engineers and take 3 times as long. But more importantly, Comet takes pride in its work and actively looks for ways to improve our operations. The Crimson Reapers had perhaps made the most dramatic transformation. Red had become the leader of a new interspecies mediation corps, using its intelligence and natural leadership abilities to help resolve conflicts between different species. Sarah Williams, now Director of Predator Vocational Training, showed videos of Red and other adult Crimson Reapers working as translators, negotiators, and problem solvers for the Galactic Diplomatic Service. Red has mediated 17 interspecies disputes in the past 3 months, Sarah reported. Its ability to understand complex social dynamics and find creative solutions has prevented several potential wars. Captain Mitchell had retired from space travel to run the Integration Center full-time. He addressed the Council about the program's expansion plans. We currently have facilities on Earth, Mars, and 3 other human colonies, he explained. We're ready to accept Predator young, from any species willing to give them a chance at life instead of death. The response had been overwhelming. Word of the human success had spread throughout the galaxy, and abandoned Predator young were arriving daily from civilizations that had previously destroyed them without question. But the most important speaker at the council meeting was not human. Red approached the podium with calm confidence, its red scales gleaming under the chamber lights. The Crimson Reaper had learned to speak several galactic languages and had become an eloquent advocate for its species. Members of the council. Red began in perfect standard galactic. I stand before you as living proof that predators and prey species can coexist peacefully. 6 months ago, I was considered biological waste, destined for destruction because of fear and prejudice. The chamber was completely silent. Many of the delegates had never heard a Crimson Reaper speak, let alone advocate for peaceful coexistence. Today, I work alongside species that my ancestors once hunted, Red continued. I have friends among the Zentari, the Morvac, and dozens of other civilizations. We have learned that intelligence and compassion are more powerful than instinct and aggression. Red paused and looked around the chamber. I do not ask you to forget the actions of my ancestors, but I ask you to judge me and my fellow rehabilitated predators by our own actions, not by the fears of the past. The speech had a profound effect on the council. Several delegates who had been opposed to the predator rehabilitation program stood up to express their support. The Morvac representative, whose species had lost thousands of lives to Void Hunter attacks over the centuries, made a particularly moving statement. If these young predators can learn to live peacefully with humans, perhaps they can learn to live peacefully with us as well. We would like to request assistance in establishing our own rehabilitation program. Within days of the council meeting, 12 different species had formally requested help setting up their own predator rehabilitation centers. Teams of human specialists, accompanied by their predator partners, were dispatched across the galaxy to provide training and support. Mark Johnson found himself traveling to the Zentari homeworld with Storm and 3 other Shadow Stalkers to establish the first non-human rehabilitation facility. The irony was not lost on anyone that Shadow Stalkers were returning to help the very species that had once tried and failed to raise them. The Zentari are terrified, Mark reported during a video call from the Zentari facility. But Storm is being incredibly patient with them. It's like Storm understands that these people need time to overcome their fears. Dr. Lisa Thompson had been assigned to work with the Morvac on establishing medical protocols for different predator species. Her research on predator biology had become the standard reference for rehabilitation centers across the galaxy. Each species requires different approaches, Lisa explained during a training session. But the basic principles remain the same. Provide appropriate care, respect their natural behaviors, and treat them as individuals rather than monsters. The success of the rehabilitation program began to change galactic society in unexpected ways. Species that had been enemies for millennia started working together when they saw their former predators cooperating peacefully. Tom Bradley, now Director of Interspecies Communications, documented these changes in his reports to Earth Command. We're seeing unprecedented cooperation between traditional enemy species. When you have a Zentari scientist working alongside a rehabilitated shadow stalker, it becomes harder to maintain old prejudices about any species. The most remarkable development came when adult predators from their native worlds began requesting permission to visit the rehabilitation centers. These wild predators had heard about their young relatives living peacefully with other species and wanted to see for themselves if such cooperation was possible. The first contact occurred when a pod of wild shadow stalkers approached the Zentari rehabilitation facility. Instead of attacking, they observed from a distance as their rehabilitated cousins worked alongside Zentari staff members. It was incredible, Mark reported. The wild shadow stalkers seemed amazed that their species could live without constant conflict. Some of them actually approached the fence and tried to communicate with our rehabilitated individuals. Similar contacts occurred at other facilities. Wild void hunters observed their rehabilitated relatives working on construction projects. Adult Crimson Reapers watched in fascination as their young relatives solved complex diplomatic problems. These encounters led to the most ambitious project yet, the establishment of integration zones, where wild predators could interact safely with other species under controlled conditions. Jessica Brown, now Chief of Documentation for the Integration Program, recorded the first successful wild predator integration. A young adult shadow stalker from the wild had requested permission to work with the rehabilitation center staff. This changes everything, Jessica noted in her report. We're not just proving that raised predators can be peaceful. We're proving that even wild predators can choose cooperation over conflict when given the opportunity. 1 year after the New Horizons returned to Earth, the transformation was complete. Predator rehabilitation centers operated on 47 worlds. Over 3,000 predator young had been successfully integrated into galactic society. Wild predators were beginning to establish peaceful contact with other species for the first time in recorded history. The old fears and prejudices were slowly being replaced by understanding and cooperation. Children from different species grew up playing together with young predators as naturally as if they were all the same species. Dr. Rebecca Martinez stood in the observation deck of the original Integration Center, watching Storm play with a group of human children and young aliens. The shadow stalker was gentle and careful with the small visitors, using its size and strength to protect rather than threaten. "We did it," Emily Foster said as she joined Rebecca at the window. "We actually changed the galaxy." Rebecca nodded, but her attention was focused on a new arrival. A transport ship was landing at the facility, carrying another group of abandoned predator young from the Outer Rim. These creatures had been given a chance at life instead of death because of what the crew of the New Horizon had proven possible. Captain Mitchell appeared beside them, still wearing his Integration Center uniform instead of his old space captain gear. "Ready for the next group?" he asked with a smile. Rebecca looked at Storm, who had noticed the arriving transport and was already moving toward the landing pad to welcome the new arrivals. The Shadow Stalker seemed to understand that its job was to help other abandoned predators find the same love and acceptance that had saved its own life. "Always ready," Rebecca replied. These kids deserve the same chance Storm got. They deserve to discover that they can be more than the monsters everyone expects them to be. As the transport doors opened and frightened young predators emerged, into the sunlight, Storm was there to greet them with gentle chirps and patient guidance. The cycle of rescue, rehabilitation, and integration continued, proving every day that love and understanding were more powerful than fear and prejudice. The galaxy had learned the most important lesson humanity had to offer: that every being, no matter how feared or misunderstood, deserved a chance to prove they could choose love over violence, cooperation over conflict, and hope over despair. In the end, it wasn't humanity's technology or military might that changed the galaxy. It was their unique ability to see potential for good in even the most unlikely places, and their willingness to extend family bonds beyond the boundaries of species, biology, and ancient fears. The predators had found their pack, and the galaxy had found a new way to live in peace.